Welcome to GC 204, Psychology of Human Learning, Lecture 1, Meaning of Learning. Introduction. This lecture discusses the meaning of psychology, descriptions, and definitions of learning across the ages, reasons for studying learning, learning process, behavior, and different types of behavior. Objectives. At the end of this lecture, learners should be able to 1. Describe the concept of learning. 2. Define learning with example. 3. Describe 3 things that cannot be regarded as learning. What is psychology? The word psychology is derived from 2 Greek words, psyche and logos. While psyche refers to the mind, logos means disputation, study, or argument. From the foregoing, it can be said that psychology means study of the mind. This was arrived at by the philosophers when psychology belonged to philosophy. Wundt, 1919, a German psychologist, succeeded in pulling psychology out of philosophy to become a discipline of its own. He defined psychology as the scientific study of human and animal minds. From this new definition, psychology now tends towards science and not philosophy, but the word mind is a philosophical term and not a scientific concept because it cannot be subjected to study in the laboratory. Psychology is then defined as the science of human and animal behavior, which includes the application of this science to human problems. Science is a body of systematized knowledge that is gathered by carefully observing and measuring events. Psychologists perform experiments and make observations which can be repeated. They obtain data, often in the form of quantitative measurements, which others can verify. As a science, psychology is systematic. Data from experiments and observations are essential, but for them to make some sense in helping humans understand events, they must be organized in some ways. What is learning? Learning is a psychological concept that cuts across psychology and education. It occupies a very important place in our lives. Most of what we do or do not do is influenced by what we learn and how we have learned it. To the layman, learning is getting to know something he does not know. Just like Oxiden, 1968, put it, that we learn what we are taught, that is, from a layman's view. Let us look at the term learning from this point of view. While a child is approaching a burning matchstick, he or she gets burnt and withdraws. The next time he or she faces a burning matchstick, he or she wastes no time in withdrawing his or her hand from it. He or she learns to avoid not only the burning matchstick, but also all burning things. Learning is the key process in human behavior. It pervades everything people do and think. It plays a central role in the language individuals speak, customs, attitudes, and beliefs, individual goals, people personality traits, both adaptive and maladaptive, and even individual perceptions. Learning can simply be defined as any relatively permanent change in behavior that occurs as a result of practice or experience. This definition has 3 important elements. 1. Learning is a change in behavior, for better, for worse, but usually for better. 2. It is a change that takes place through practice or experience. Changes due to growth or maturation are not learning. 3. Before it can be called learning, the change must be relatively permanent. It must last a fairly long time. Exactly how long cannot be specified, but we usually think of learned changes in behavior as lasting for days, months, or years, unlike the temporary behavioral effects of factors such as drugs or fatigue. Why study learning? Since most human behavior is learned, investigating the principles of learning will help us understand why individuals behave as they do. An awareness of the learning process will allow greater understanding not only of normal and adaptive behavior, but also of the circumstances that produce maladaptive and abnormal behavior. More effective psychotherapy might result from such an understanding. Learning process. In order for learning to take place in the school, the teacher plays a significant role in guiding the learner by motivating him towards learning activity through which he can achieve a purposeful goal. To achieve this, there are defined and clear processes of learning through which the desired changes will take place. These include 1. Sensation. This is the process of receiving, translating, and transmitting message from the environment to the brain. This process normally goes through bodily senses of sight, hearing, feeling, touching, smelling, tasting, etc. These bodily senses are generally referred to as gateways to knowledge. 2. Perception. This is the process of organizing and interpreting information received from the outside world. The sensitive organs, eye, ear, nose, skin, tongue, by means of which the learner becomes aware of the forces, objects, or changes in the world around him, are called receptors. Perception is the internal analysis of the sensation by the brain or the information processing unit. Sensation and perception are closely interrelated. Sensation causes the individual to turn his head, eyes, or body in a particular direction, while perception maintains the length of attention or consideration focused upon the direction of thing. Thus, perception is the process of extracting information instantly and unconsciously from the environment. 3. Association. This is the third stage in learning process. It is the ability of connecting one's new experience with his previous experience. 4. Generalization. This is the fourth stage in learning, which involves the establishment of principles, theories, inferences, laws, conclusions, or rules which summarize some findings. 5. Application. This is the final stage in the learning process. It is the process of using the established principles of learning to solve problems in actual life situations. Meaning of psychology of learning. Psychology of learning is concerned with learning. It is a peer term that belongs to two disciplines. It is a central hub in psychology as well as education. Educational psychology established itself as a discipline investigating learning and a variety of factors that affect it. The basis for understanding human conditioning is well established. However, the simple processes discovered at the turn of the century, Pavlov, 1903, Thorndike, 1898, 1903, and elaborated on between 1930 and 1960. Hull, 1943. Skinner, 1938, 1953. Spence, 1956, only partially explain human learning as it manifests itself in the classroom. The need for study of psychology of learning includes the following: to understand individual differences. There is the need to understand the individual differences in learning among learners so that the teaching methods selected by the teacher can take care of the individual differences existing among the learners. To master the concept of motivation. There is the need for the teacher to master the concept of motivation developed by various theorists of learning in order to understand the needs and motives of the learners at different age levels and be able to organize those activities which create interest and motivation in them. To understand the process of remembering and forgetting. The teacher needs to understand the process of remembering and forgetting so that he can utilize efficient methods to minimize the percentage of forgetfulness. To help the learner to transfer skills. With the knowledge gained from the study of psychology of learning, the teacher can help the learners to transfer skills and information acquired in classroom to life situations outside the school. Numerous questions could be raised as a result of this simple definition of learning, such as: what is behavior? Behavior is a function of the mind. The signals it receives and the messages it sends to different parts of our systems, telling them to behave in some way. Behavior manifests in three ways: how individuals think, feel, and act. Classification of behaviors. Behavior can be classified into two major classes. A. Overt behavior, which refers to behavior that can be seen, manifested, or observed, e.g., anger. B. Covert behavior, that is, behavior that cannot be seen, manifested, or observed, e.g., thinking, imagination. What is experience? Experience can be regarded as the process of an organism interaction with the components of a given environment over a period of time. Experience comes as a result of interaction with environment. Types of experience. There are two types of experience. There are direct experience and indirect experience. The indirect experience is also known as vicarious experience, either through watching or reading about other people, e.g., watching war films. Direct experience may not always be possible in learning, but where it is possible, it makes the learner to learn better and faster. That is, by bringing the real objects as example in the classroom situation. Is relatively permanent change in behaviors permanent? The answer to the question is that a change is relatively permanent only when it remains with the individual concerned till death. A classical example of learning bringing a relatively permanent change in behavior can be seen in a crawling child who sees fire and is very attractive and would desire to touch because of the ardent behavior or approach behavior. When the child touches the fire and it burns him, he will start crying and so develop ardent behavior. Summary. What you have learned in this lecture concerns descriptions and definitions of learning from the different perspectives. This chapter shall be built upon to ensure clarity of concepts and understanding of the content. End of lecture 1. Thank you for listening.